Do you ever find yourself leading worship with just an acoustic guitar? Maybe you feel ashamed that you're doing that. Maybe you're like, man, if I only had 37 other band members, our worship would be so much better. I feel like worship leaders think that sometimes, if we're being honest. And it's just not true. You can lead a perfectly fine worship set for the rest of your life with just an acoustic guitar. There's nothing magical about having more instruments. Is it nice to have? Sure, it's nice to have, but is it necessary? No. So I'm going to share with you my best tips for leading worship with just an acoustic guitar as someone who's been doing it on and off for the past 18 years. And we need to start by thinking about some mindset things here first. I'll give you 2 mindset things and then 3 practical things. The first thing that we need to realize about leading worship with just an acoustic guitar is that it is not a disadvantage. Quit seeing your worship leading and your church's worship as less than if it's just done with an acoustic guitar. There's nothing incomplete about it. You're not missing anything. Why? Because the main instrument of our worship is the people's voices in our gathering. It's not you as the leader. It's not your guitar. It's not having 3 electric guitars to fill in all of the sonic spectrum. It's not having 2 keyboard players, one on a synthesizer and one playing normal piano sounds. Those things are nice to have, but they aren't necessary. We don't need them. The only thing that is necessary is your congregation singing. They don't even need your guitar. You could sing a cappella and have a great time of worship. Do you actually believe that, though? Do you believe that the main instrument in your church is your congregation's voice? If you do, then you shouldn't be ashamed to lead with just an acoustic guitar. So there is no spiritual disadvantage to leading with just an acoustic guitar. I'm not saying that there aren't musical advantages to having more instruments, but speaking strictly spiritually, you are not missing anything by just having an acoustic guitar. I want you to know that, and I want you to believe that, so that you are not ashamed to lead with just an acoustic guitar. You aren't missing anything. Here's the other advantage. There's actually an advantage of leading with just an acoustic guitar, and that is, over the past few years, there has been this move towards intimacy in worship, whatever that means, authenticity, which I should do a video on because I have thoughts about authenticity in worship and what authentic worship is. But I think sometimes when people talk about that, they're saying, I'm tired of all the lights and all of the show and stuff. And so they connect better, whatever that means, with just an acoustic guitar. It's stripped back, it's simple, and it is a more intimate setting where now, instead of a huge band and a wall of sound coming at us, it's really, I think it highlights the fact that the congregation is the main instrument in our corporate worship, because you aren't blowing it out with a bunch of other sounds. And once again, I'm not saying that it's horrible to have a big band either. I'm just trying to give you some confidence in leading with just an acoustic guitar. So lean into that intimacy. Lean in to more almost a cappella singing times where maybe you're still strumming a little bit on the guitar just to lead people through singing, but you aren't trying to take over the whole melodic sonic space by slamming on your guitar. Do just enough to lead people in singing and allow your congregation's voice to be the main instrument. Here's the other mindset shift, is that just because it's just you and an acoustic guitar doesn't mean that your job changes. And conversely, when you add more people to your band eventually, that doesn't mean that your job changes. Your job as a worship leader is not to create this amazing musical experience that people can experience. Music, we need to quit making music effectual in and of itself. I'm not saying that music never has an effect on people, and I'm not even saying that the ability to express our emotions through music is a bad thing, but don't think that if you don't have a kick drum, you can't have, joyful music in your church. Here's what your job is. Your job is to point people to the worthiness of God and provide them with the opportunity to respond. Your job is to take people to the Word of God and say, remember the promises that He has given us. Remember His wondrous works. I mean, how many times in the Israelite worship was it just them remembering what God had done in the past? What if we viewed our job as saying, hey, church, remember all the amazing things that God has done in the past. Remember the future promises that he has. Point them to the worthiness of God, his attributes, and then lead them in responding to those things. That job does not change depending on the amount of instruments you have on your team. So view the opportunity to lead with just an acoustic guitar to focus in on the foundations of leading worship, having your church sing together so that they can teach and admonish one another with all wisdom, and pointing people to the worthiness of God. You don't have to worry about click tracks. You don't have to worry about the band playing together. You don't have to worry about a million other things, that the intricacies that pop up whenever you've got 7 people on your worship team. So focus on the things that really matter and get really good at those things so that when you have other people join you eventually, you've already got a solid foundation. Use this as a season to build the foundational skills of leading worship. Now let's talk about something practical. I said I had 3 practical things. The first one is this. When it's just us with an acoustic guitar, keeping in mind that the congregation's voice is the main instrument of worship, we have to be really careful with our song keys. Sometimes it's easy to sort of fudge the song keys whenever you've got a bunch of sound, because as people sing louder, well, there's a couple things that happen. Number one, I think they're able to sing higher because they're singing harder, so we can cover up song key selections that way. But also they feel a little more comfortable singing out because it's so loud and maybe people can't hear them, which is a conversation for another video because I don't think it should be that way. But whenever it's just us and an acoustic guitar, we don't have the volume to get people to sing louder, and people aren't going to be able to hide in a wall of noise. And so if we want our people to sing along, we should be very careful about the keys that we pick. And I'll show you real quick how to put your songs in a singable key. Here's what you do real quick, and I'll link a video where I go into further breakdown of this, but I'll give you the quick process here, okay? The simple process is this. Here's the range that we are aiming for on a guitar. We've got, and if you're on a piano, this is middle C, and this is C4. So C5 and C4 on a guitar, that's the 5th fret of the G string, 3rd fret of the A string. That's the range that we're aiming for. We want the majority of the notes, maybe even all of the notes, to fit between that octave range. That's going to be the most singable range for the people in your congregation. So we've got that inside of our mind. We don't want to go below a C or above a C for a long period of time. You can jump out of that range periodically, but we don't want the majority of the song to lie there. Now, we take our song, whatever it is. For some reason right now, the song Yes I Will by Vertical Worship pops into my head. Super random, I don't know why, but let's use that as an example. And what we're going to do is we're going to play the melody on our guitar, and it doesn't have to be beautiful. We're not trying to play it perfectly. We just want to find the highest note and the lowest note so we can see where the melody falls, keeping in mind that range of C to C. So the song goes, we'll do it in G here. Goes, I count on one thing, the same God who never fails is working all things out. He's working all things out. Like I said, it doesn't have to be pretty. All right, what did we learn? We learned that it goes down to like a D there. It might drop for a second below there, but basically we're at the D. So let's go to the chorus now. We haven't gotten outside of our range yet. Yes, I will lift you high in the lowest valley. Yes, I will bless your name. So we hit that C, name. And I think that's going to be the highest it gets in the chorus. We have one more part that we have to check. Let's check the bridge. I'll choose to praise. Whatever, like, see, I'm real sloppy with it. It doesn't really matter. We're not trying to figure out every note perfectly. But what did I learn? Well, I found out we're kind of hammering that B to C area. I'll choose to praise, to glorify the name of all names, and nothing can stand against. right? We go up to a D, but it's just for a second, so it's fine. All right, so what did we find out? We found out that the majority of the notes fall within our C to C, so that is a good range for us to pick for the song. Now, if we did that and it was like let's say I did it and I'm like, maybe I'll do it in B or something, and I throw my capo on and do the same exercise, and it's like, I'll choose to praise, to glorify the name of all names. Nothing can stand against, I'll choose to praise. Right, we go up to an F sharp, like get out of here, nobody's singing that. We want to stay down here. C to C, you can jump outside of that range a little bit. If you keep that in mind, your church will be able to sing better. So if you feel like people are struggling to sing whenever you lead with just an acoustic guitar, chances are it's not the fact that you don't have a good instrumentation to back yourself up. It's that they can't sing the songs because you're singing them too high or too low potentially, but most of the time we go too high. The second practical thing is whenever it's just us musically, we really need to focus on our transitions. We really have to be mindful of how we're going to get from one song to the next. If we're going to have any scripture reading in there, how we're going to manage that, because it's just us up there. And so we don't want to have to go from like a song in G to a song in B or something, and we're like, and we end on a G, and then we've got to, I got to take my capo off and put it on the 4th fret, and now I'm good, right? We don't want all of that dead air in there. So really think about your transitions and think, how am I going to get between the songs? Now, it was kind of like, when I did that there, it was kind of like one of those infomercials where they try to make things look as bad as possible, and they're like, have you ever tried to crack open an egg before? And they're like smashing it on the ground. They're like, it's so messy, I don't know how people do it. You need this tool. I kind of made it look like that. But one of the ways you can improve your transitions is just to think through them in advance, all right? If I'm playing a song in G and I need to go to the key of B, I can do that without being ridiculous, but I've got to know it in advance so I'm not fumbling around like I just did. So I end a song in G, end the G, let it ring out for a second. All right, I'm going to B. Right, like that wasn't a ridiculous transition. It took me like half a second to put my capo on. So just don't be ridiculous about your transitions. The way you can not be ridiculous about your transitions is just by thinking about them in advance. Another obvious way to minimize the transitions is to think about your song keys, and if you can put songs in singable keys that are either the same key, and you do a set of songs in the key of G, and like you do 2 or 3 songs in the key of G, and you never have to change your capo, that works, and then you can just flow from one song to the next, assuming you don't have prayer or scripture reading between those things, between the songs. Or you can pick similar keys, or I guess they're technically called related keys, but these would be like keys like G and C. They share a lot of the same notes, so you could end a song in G, and then you could go to a song in C. So it would sound like, here's G, end on a G, and then let's go into a song in C. See, that wouldn't sound that ridiculous, and I think so often we're worried about transitions, and it's like 95% of your transitions is just you figuring out how to eliminate dead space. It doesn't really matter how you eliminate dead space. You just want to make sure that you don't have 5 seconds of awkward silence between your songs, all right? If you need to take your capo off, do it. If you need to switch to a new key, just do it. We don't need to worry about modulations and stuff. You're not going to throw people out of their act of worship just because we stopped for a second. And the third practical thing I want you to think about is keeping it interesting musically. One of the reasons people don't like when people lead worship with just an acoustic guitar is because they're just playing it like this. And they just do that for like, oh, well, the sheet music tells me there's 8 measures of me just playing this, and you're just awkwardly staring at your congregation. Right? It's boring. So there's 2 things we can do. And I do both of these. Number 1 is I try to remove as many instrumental sections as possible. And obviously sometimes, okay, it's good to have instrumental sections in there where people can consider what they just sang and they can reflect on it. So I'm not saying just like sing it like verse by verse by verse like a hymn or something, but be mindful that when you have a big band, you can make things more musically intricate because somebody's playing rhythm guitar and somebody's playing a lead guitar and you've got other stuff working in the background. So if you don't have those things, then you don't need a big instrumental section because it's just going to be boring and there's nothing to lead people's ear in it. So just cut it out. You don't need that. Now, the other thing is, if you are going to have some sort of instrumental section, like a short instrumental section, and it's kind of integral to the song, then figure out how to play that instrumental while you're playing guitar. And I'll link down below a playlist. I think I have like over 100, or I have 100 songs of advanced guitar tutorials where you can see this in action, where I put the lead line of the song in the instrumental part while I'm playing the chords. I'll show you an example here. So let's use the song. I don't know why this pops in my head, but I think I like the lead line. It's Your Love is Greater by Phil Wickham. I don't know why that pops into my head, but let's use it as an example. So at the beginning, it's got that lead line. Like it's got that, like, I don't even know if it's electric guitar or synth or whatever. I haven't heard that song in a while, but it's got a lead line like that in the back. If we wanted to play it boringly on guitar, we could just do it like this. It'd be like, right? And how many times have you heard this sort of intro in somebody leading on an acoustic? It's like, they're like looking around like, yeah. I go, there were walls between us, by the cross you came and broke them down. It's like, okay, let's just get into the song. But if you add the lead line to it, it sounds like this instead. There were walls between us, by the cross you came and broke them down, broke them down. Right? I mean, that's so much more interesting. So if you want to learn to play that way, I'll link a playlist down in the description below to my advanced guitar tutorials. Also, I'll link down below, I used some advanced guitar chords in those tutorials, so I've got a free PDF called 25 Advanced Guitar Chords that you can use. They're not any harder to play than normal guitar chords. You just know them, put them into your guitar chord vocabulary. And instead of playing a G like this all the time, you play a G like this, or like this, or like this, or like this, or like this, so on and so forth. You'll learn all of those chords in the free PDF. So check that out down in the description below. Other than that, thanks so much for joining me. Till I see you in the next video, keep leading worship well with just an acoustic guitar. You can do it.